My stepson declared, "You'll never be my father." The next day, I took back the laptop I had bought, stopped paying for his activities, and canceled all subscriptions. Only then did he understand that words carry consequences. Subscribe and leave your story in the comments. Time to jump right in. My name is Dan. I am 45 years old, and 3 years ago, I married Lisa. To those who watched from the outside, we looked like a family beginning anew, steady and blended, the kind that graces holiday cards. 2 parents, children from different paths merging under one roof, a second chance for love and stability. I had already lived through the wreckage of divorce. From my first marriage, I had 2 children, Sarah and Andrew, who remained the beating heart of my existence. With their mother, I forged what many would call a rare truce. No screaming matches in courtrooms, no venom sprayed across custody schedules, no attempts to poison the children's love. We co-parented with discipline, respect, and even, at times, kindness. Sarah and Andrew thrived in that balance. With them, I never doubted where I stood. They called me when they were sad. They hugged me without hesitation. They trusted me without suspicion. I was their father, unshaken, unchallenged. But with Lisa's son, Ryan, it was different. He is 17 now, a young man hovering on the edge of adulthood. But when I first stepped into his life, he was 14. Awkward, already hardened, already scarred by a father who lived as a rumor more than a presence. His biological father, Mark, floated in and out of his life like smoke, impossible to grasp, impossible to depend on. He arrived only when it suited him, most often when there was a camera nearby. Birthdays staged with balloons and cake for photographs. Social media posts about my boy, posted by a man who didn't know the name of his son's teachers, or the sound of his son's cough at night. Mark never paid a medical bill, never sat through a fever, never spent hours in a waiting room while a doctor explained what an X-ray revealed. He brought presents, yes, flashy, shallow things meant to shine in photographs, but he never carried the weight of responsibility. He was a shadow that swept in, dropped a trinket, and disappeared before the dust settled. So it was me who filled the silence he left behind. At first, I told myself I wasn't trying to replace Mark. I wasn't seeking a title. I didn't need Ryan to call me dad. I only wanted to be steady, to be the person who showed up. So I drove him to school in the bitter cold when the buses ran late. I was the one in the bleachers at his soccer games, clapping until my palms stung. I taught him to drive. Long hours in parking lots and side streets, his nervous laughter clashing with my patient commands. When he was sick, I sat by his bed, cooling his forehead with damp towels, whispering reassurances when he drifted in and out of restless sleep. And slowly, quietly, the care turned into obligation. I added him to my car insurance, paying the inflated rates that came with insuring a teenage driver. I extended my family's phone plan to include him, covering his endless data use without complaint. I bought him a laptop when his old one failed, telling myself education mattered more than my own savings. Subscriptions, sports fees, extracurriculars, I paid for them all. My money flowed into his life like water from a hidden well, unnoticed, unthanked, but always available. Yet it wasn't just about money. I wanted something deeper. I carved out time for road trips, weekends of video games, nights in the backyard with a fire pit crackling while we talked about college, about dreams, about nothing at all. I laughed when he laughed. I drove him and his friends across town so they wouldn't feel trapped. I stayed awake on nights when he came home late, making sure he was safe before I let myself rest. I thought those moments mattered. I thought I was laying down bricks one by one to build trust, the kind of trust that transforms strangers into family. But here is the truth I see now. I was building illusions. Ryan accepted my presence, but never fully welcomed it. He enjoyed the benefits of my labor, but never acknowledged the man who provided them. He lived in the comfort I created, but never once looked at me as the architect. When I paid for insurance, it was invisible. When I replaced a broken laptop, it was expected. When I filled the fridge, it was background noise. Still, I refused to see it. I told myself gratitude was slow to arrive, that teenagers were cruel by instinct, that respect would grow in silence like roots underground. I excused every shrug, every rolled eye, every muttered dismissal. I swallowed them all, believing patience would bloom into recognition one day. I even convinced myself that Mark's absence would eventually show Ryan the truth, that the man who posted photos but never paid a bill was nothing compared to the man who labored in silence. I thought time itself would reveal the difference. And maybe, in rare moments, I believed I saw a flicker of it. The night he scored a goal and turned, breathless, to see me cheering. The time he called me first when he scraped the car against a curb, his voice shaking, looking to me for guidance instead of the father who would never pick up the phone. I stored those moments like treasures, proof that my years of care were not in vain. I let them blind me, because the larger truth, the truth I did not want to face, was that Ryan never gave me what mattered most: acknowledgement. I was there, always there, but to him I was only a utility. The man who kept the lights on, the car fueled, the phone buzzing, the laptop charged. He took the care but never gave the bond. And yet, I still believed. God help me, I still believed. For 3 years, I lived with that hope, convinced that one day he would wake up and realize that family is not defined by blood, but by who shows up. I thought he would see the sacrifices I had made, the hours I had worked, the life I had quietly surrendered to keep his running smoothly. I thought he would look at me not as a step in the shadow of his father, but as a man who had earned his place. That belief kept me moving, kept me paying. It kept me silent through every slight, every dismissal, every cruel joke that cut just a little too deep. I thought I was building a family, but what I was really building was the stage for betrayal. It happened on an ordinary morning. No storm outside, no argument building. Just breakfast. Eggs hissing in the pan, Sarah scrolling on her phone, Andrew yawning into his cereal, Lisa moving quietly between stove and counter. Ryan sat across from me, slouched, his face drawn tight with irritation about something trivial. Then, without warning, he turned his head and spat the words that split the room like glass shattering. "You'll never be my dad." The silence afterward was heavy, suffocating. Even the scrape of Andrew's spoon against his bowl stopped. Sarah froze mid-scroll, eyes darting between us, waiting for me to respond. Lisa's back stiffened at the stove, but she said nothing. For me, it was not just rejection. It was contempt, an open wound cut across years of sacrifice. I had bled for that boy, not with grand speeches or heroic gestures, but in the slow, grinding way that fathers bleed. Through bills paid, nights of lost sleep, endless patience in the face of teenage storms. And in one sentence, he dismissed it all. The words didn't come out as a joke. There was no smirk, no hint of sarcasm. His tone was flat, sharp, and deliberate, like he had rehearsed them, like he had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He wanted me to feel the sting. He wanted to carve me out of his life with a single slash. I didn't answer, couldn't. My mouth went dry, my pulse thundered in my ears, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I just sat there, staring at my plate, my chest hollow. But inside, something shifted, something final. That afternoon, while Ryan sulked in his room and Lisa tried to pretend nothing had happened, I moved quietly through the house. I unplugged the laptop I had bought for him, slid it into its case, and locked it in my office. I called the sports program and canceled his enrollment, my voice calm as I told them Ryan would not be returning. I logged into the family phone plan and removed his line, transferring the account under his father's name. Then I called my insurance provider and erased Ryan from my policy. One by one, I severed the ties that bound me to him, not out of rage, but with the cold clarity of a man who has finally seen the truth. If I was not his father, then I would not pay a father's price. By the time evening came, the invisible scaffolding that had held his life together was gone. His laptop was no longer his. His sports ended with a single phone call. His phone line, his insurance, his subscriptions, all of it stripped back and handed to the man he claimed mattered more, his biological father. I did not slam doors. I did not shout. I carried out each decision with steady, deliberate hands, because it was not anger driving me. It was revelation. When Ryan declared I was not his father, He thought those words would wound only my pride. But they cut deeper. They destroyed the foundation on which I had built every act of care, every sacrifice, every belief that someday he would see me as more than a placeholder. By nightfall, I had accepted the reality he had spoken aloud. I was nothing to him. And if I was nothing, then I would no longer play the role of everything. The fallout came swiftly. The next morning, Ryan discovered his phone was dead. No service, no data. He cursed, shaking it in his hand, demanding answers. Later, when he tried to use the car, he realized the insurance had lapsed. He came stomping back inside, face red, shouting that it wasn't fair. That evening, he opened his laptop and found it missing. He tore through the house, slamming doors, accusing Sarah and Andrew of stealing it, until he realized the truth. It was gone. All of it. Lisa confronted me that night, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "Dan, what are you doing? He's just a kid. He didn't mean it." I met her eyes and said the only truth that mattered. He meant it enough to say it, and now he gets to live with it. She tried to argue, but the words collapsed on her tongue, because she knew, deep down, that Ryan's sentence had been more than teenage rebellion. It was a declaration. Still, she begged, "Please don't do this. You know Mark won't step up. You know he won't pay for any of it." "Then let Ryan see the difference for himself," I said. "Let him see what his words cost." And so he did. Within days, Ryan stood stranded in a world stripped of the invisible supports he had always taken for granted. His phone silent, his laptop gone, his car undrivable, his sports team dissolved. He came to me in the kitchen, his face pale with panic, his voice shaking in a way I had never heard before. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I looked at him steadily. "I'm not doing anything. I just stopped pretending to be your father. You told me what I was. I listened." He swallowed hard, his bravado cracking. "I didn't mean it like that. I was just angry. I didn't mean." I cut him off. "Apologies are just words. Respect is actions. You'll have to show me who I am to you, not tell me." For the first time in years, Ryan had no reply. He turned away, shoulders hunched, silence replacing the arrogance that had always filled the room. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was simply awake. Ryan had thrown down his truth. I had answered with mine. The storm broke quickly. By the second day, Ryan's world was already collapsing. He tried to use his phone, but the line had gone silent. He stood in the kitchen, shaking it like it was broken, shouting at Lisa that something's wrong with the network. She looked at me, eyes wide, silently pleading. I didn't say a word. When he tried to drive, he discovered the car sat useless in the driveway, uninsured. I had already called the provider, removed his name, and shifted the burden to Mark. No insurance meant no driving, not legally, not safely. Ryan came storming back inside, yelling that the car wasn't working. I looked at him and said only, "Talk to your father." That evening, when he opened his laptop and found it missing from his desk, his voice cracked with fury. He tore through the house, ripping open drawers, accusing Sarah and Andrew of stealing it. When he found nothing, he barged into my office, his hands trembling. "Where is it?" he demanded. I looked him in the eye and spoke evenly. "It wasn't yours to begin with. I bought it. I took it back." The color drained from his face. He stood frozen, caught between rage and disbelief, his lips parted but no words forming. Then he slammed the door and vanished into his room, the sound of his fists pounding against the walls echoing through the house. Lisa confronted me that night. Her voice shook, and her hands gripped the counter as if it were the only thing keeping her steady. "Dan, this is cruel. He's just a boy. You can't strip everything away from him." I stayed calm. "I didn't strip anything. I gave and then I stopped. If I am not his father, then I have no duty to pay for a son who doesn't claim me." Her eyes burned. "But Mark won't do it. You know he won't. You've seen it for years. He doesn't care." "Then Ryan will learn who his father really is," I said coldly. Better now than later. And with that, the truth hit the house like a flood. The fallout spread through every corner of Ryan's life. His phone stopped working. His laptop gone. His car untouchable. His sports team called, saying he was off the roster. Subscriptions vanished. He had no access to the invisible comforts that once flowed from me without notice. And Mark, the man Ryan had clung to by blood, the father he had exalted in defiance of me, wanted nothing to do with any of it. He cursed me on the phone for dumping this mess on him, as if responsibility were some foreign burden he could not comprehend. He complained about the cost, the inconvenience, the sudden expectation that he act like a father after years of pretending to be one. For Ryan, reality arrived like a hammer. By the third day, he came to me in the kitchen. His face was pale, his voice unsteady. Gone was the arrogance, the sharp tone. He looked like a child who had been stripped of every illusion. I didn't mean it, he said, his words tumbling out. I was angry, that's all. I didn't mean it like that. You've done more for me than he ever did. For a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. But then I saw it. The desperation behind his eyes. The panic of a boy who realized his survival depended on the man he had tried to cast aside. I set my fork down and looked at him steadily. Apologies are just words, Ryan. Respect is actions. If you want me to believe you, show me. He swallowed hard, his eyes darting away, shame creeping into his features. For the first time, silence replaced his defiance. Lisa, standing nearby, wiped at her eyes. Dan, please, he knows now. He understands. I turned to her. Does he? Or does he only understand that without me, his comforts vanish? There's a difference. That night, Ryan stayed in his room, quiet, the glow of his useless phone screen lighting the darkness. The house felt heavier than it ever had. Every creak of the floorboards weighted with tension. In the days that followed, his posture changed. He no longer stormed through the house demanding things. He asked cautiously if he could borrow Sarah's laptop for homework. He waited until Andrew was done with the car before asking for a ride. He spoke less, listened more. The sharp edge of entitlement dulled. But I did not soften. I wanted him to feel the cost of his words, to live inside the hollow space he had carved with them. He had declared I was not his father. Now he had to live in that declaration, stripped of every gift a father provides. Mark, predictably, failed at every turn. When Ryan called him, he dodged the calls or answered with excuses. He muttered about money, about being unprepared, about not having the means. The man Ryan had once exalted could not even cover the price of his son's phone bill. And in that failure, Ryan's eyes turned to me again. Not with arrogance, not with contempt, but with something close to respect. The first time he said it, his voice was quiet, almost ashamed. He was with his friends, standing in the driveway. I heard it from the window. He introduced me not as my stepdad, but simply as my dad. It was subtle, small, but it was proof. Proof that my decision had cut deeper than his words ever could. He had learned that love without respect is hollow. That comfort without responsibility is an illusion. That words, once spoken, carry weight heavy enough to shatter the world around you. And I had learned, finally, that patience without boundaries is slavery. The lesson was written in silence, in the absence of things once taken for granted. Ryan had spoken contempt into existence. I had answered with consequences. And for the first time, he understood. In the weeks that followed, the air in the house changed. The silence that once pressed on us like a weight began to loosen, though never entirely. Ryan moved differently, spoke differently. The boy who had once wielded contempt like a wee *p*n began to tread with caution. I watched it happen in fragments. He no longer left his dirty dishes scattered across the counter, waiting for Lisa to scold him on my behalf. Instead, he carried them to the sink, rinsed them, and set them down. He stopped demanding new things, stopped asking for money as if it were his right, stopped sighing when I told him no. When his friends came over, he introduced me simply as my dad, not stepdad. At first, I thought I had misheard. But then I saw the way his friends nodded naturally, no questions asked, and I realized Ryan had chosen that word himself. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't meant for me. It was something quieter, something closer to truth. Lisa noticed the changes too. She said nothing at first, as though speaking might shatter the fragile transformation. She watched Ryan with wary eyes, hopeful, uncertain. For her, it was a relief. Proof that maybe the fracture could heal, that maybe her son and I could stand on the same ground at last. But I didn't rush to embrace it, because I had learned something in those weeks. Something bitter, something necessary. Love alone is not enough. Care alone is not enough. Years of sacrifice, of labor, of quiet devotion mean nothing when respect is absent. Without respect, love curdles into entitlement, care mutates into servitude. I had spent years giving endlessly, believing that patience would eventually buy me a place in Ryan's heart. But patience without boundaries is a trap. Teaches nothing but dependence. Creates a cycle where one person gives and the other only takes, until the giver is hollow and the taker blind. I broke that cycle, not with shouting, not with violence, but with absence. By cutting off the comforts he thought permanent, I forced him to face the truth of his words. I showed him that every sentence carries a price, and his debt had come due. Ryan, for all his anger, learned quickly. He saw his real father for what he was. A ghost who vanished when the bill arrived, a man who wanted the glory of the title but none of its weight. And in contrast, he saw me, the man who had stood by him when it mattered, the man who had carried him through sickness, through school, through endless quiet moments of care. One evening he came to me, not with anger, not with desperation, but with something quieter. "I know I was wrong," he said. His voice cracked, but there was no performance in it. Just exhaustion and a fragile sincerity. "You've done more for me than he ever has. I shouldn't have said what I said." I looked at him carefully, studying his face. "Words are easy," I told him. "Respect is not in what you say, Ryan. It's in what you do. If you mean it, prove it." He nodded. No excuses, no whining, just a quiet understanding. And slowly he did. He stopped waiting for Lisa to repeat my words before obeying. He looked me in the eye when I spoke. He began to thank me, not always, not perfectly, but enough that I could feel the difference. When he walked through the door with his friends, he used the word "Dad" without hesitation, and this time he didn't glance at me nervously afterward. He said it because he wanted to, because finally he believed it. It didn't erase the wound. Betrayal never disappears. The memory of his words, "You'll never be my dad," still echoes when the house is quiet. It still cuts when I let myself think about it. Some scars never fade. But scars are reminders, not open wounds. They mark the place where pain lived, but also the place where healing began. And so I carry it. I carry the memory of the years I spent giving without recognition, of the silence Lisa kept when she should have spoken, of the contempt Ryan once wielded. But I also carry the lesson. Love without boundaries breeds disrespect. Generosity without consequences becomes slavery. Ryan learned, too. He learned that blood is not enough. That the father who gave him life abandoned him to struggle, while the man he rejected stood beside him in every storm. He learned that words are not weightless. They carve reality, and once carved, you must live inside them. And for me, the lesson was sharper still. Sometimes the only way to teach a child the value of what they have is to take it away. Sometimes the only way to win respect is to stop offering yourself as a gift and let them feel the cold edge of absence. Now, when I hear him call me Dad, I don't smile easily. I don't rush to believe it erases the past. I let it sit, heavy, measured, because respect must be lived, not spoken. And trust, once shattered, is not rebuilt with a single word. It is rebuilt day by day, action by action. But I have seen enough to know the lesson struck deep. Ryan knows now that family is not a title you inherit by blood. It is a bond forged in sacrifice, in presence, in respect. And if he has finally chosen to see me as his father, it is not because I demanded the word, but because I forced him to live without me until he understood what I was worth. Sometimes love is soft, but sometimes love is hard, cold, and merciless. Sometimes love means letting someone drown in their own choices until they learn to swim. That is what I did. That is what changed us both. So tell me, was I wrong? Was I too harsh, too merciless, to strip everything away until he understood? Or was it the only way left to teach him that words carry weight, and respect is the price of love?